We live in the golden age of AI. 3 or 4 major companies, along with a number of smaller ones, are all competing to be the next big force in AI for consumers. We now have access to tools and capabilities that would be impossibly expensive if we were paying the full unsubsidized cost. Eventually, however, the euphoria will fade. The true cost of running and developing these models will have to be paid, and access will likely coalesce around the main players: Google, Microsoft, and possibly Apple. OpenAI may remain a major player, depending on how its finances evolve. Grok, on the other hand, is likely to stay a fringe product, partly because of its more right-leaning, less censored philosophy, and partly because the fourfold increase in price for its latest models creates a barrier to broader adoption. OpenAI itself is something of an open question, reminiscent of Yahoo in the early 2000s. The company has extraordinary innovation velocity, but its burn rate and long-term financial commitments far exceed its revenue. That places it in the category of a potential acquisition target. While this is speculative, Microsoft Copilot, despite being everywhere, is still lacking in capability. A merger or acquisition would not be surprising. Copilot's ubiquity does not translate to usefulness. On the other hand, since Apple now integrates ChatGPT into its ecosystem, Apple could theoretically acquire OpenAI if it wanted deeper control of generative AI. Apple wants to be a major AI player, but Apple Intelligence is struggling at launch. It depends heavily on ChatGPT, and the handoff between Apple services and OpenAI is clunky at best. The branding is also questionable. Calling it Apple Intelligence implies a fully integrated private solution, even though most real queries rely on ChatGPT. Apple's promises of privacy do not entirely align with that dependency. In robotics, China is leading the way in many categories. Tesla still has the potential to be a major humanoid robotics leader, and Chinese companies like XPeng are competitive because they already have large-scale manufacturing infrastructure from their electric vehicle production lines. These companies can repurpose supply chains, battery systems, and actuator research directly into robotics. It feels like every day brings a new humanoid robot with improved dexterity, battery life, and autonomy. Some are genuinely useful for consumers, especially in the home assistant category, while others are focused on industrial automation. The pace resembles the early smartphone era, where rapid iteration drove dramatic year-over-year capability increases. When most people think of AI today, they think of chatbots, similar to how a few years ago, thinking about search meant thinking about Google. Google arrived late to the generative AI race, but Gemini is now a solid product, and Google's unmatched financial and compute backing make it a likely long-term leader. Unfortunately, this means that future access to AI, especially Google-based AI, will likely be filled with ads unless users pay premium subscription prices, similar to YouTube. This raises a question. Is OpenAI the Netscape of today, competing against a much larger and deeply entrenched Google? Or is OpenAI the Napster of today, at risk of being reduced to a shell of itself by legal or financial pressures? One prediction is that the dominant consumer AI in the long run will be Google or OpenAI, with the caveat that OpenAI is likely to be owned by Microsoft, or possibly Apple in a long-shot scenario. Anthropic is a strong contender, but it markets itself more toward businesses and security-conscious enterprise customers. Beyond that, most other players do not significantly register in the public consciousness. They may build solid models, but they lack the distribution and branding to matter in the consumer AI arena. Abacus Deep Agent is an excellent product, but lacks the brand recognition of ChatGPT or Gemini. The same applies to many specialized AI companies. Their technology may be impressive, but consumer mindshare is everything in this space. Most major companies are radically restructuring their software divisions around AI. This transformation is happening over months, not years. Tools like Cursor and Windsurf illustrate a major trend in software development. These are AI-paired programming environments that can generate, refactor, and maintain code at scale. For programmers, Windsurf and Cursor represent the new paradigm, although even this is temporary. Eventually, companies will create their own internal versions of these tools or develop enterprise-specific interfaces backed by private models. A new trend called vibe coding, where business experts describe logic and AI translates it into working code, will take over an increasing share of development work. It is difficult not to compare this moment to the dot-com era. For consumers, it is an incredible time. New technology is emerging at a frantic pace, and much of it is available directly to end users. Profitability is often ignored in favor of innovation and land grabs in the market. In the end, profitability will determine which companies survive. But for now, it is an exciting ride. Everything from children's toys to home appliances now claims to incorporate AI. During the dot-com years, companies raced to get online and add .com to their branding. Today, they race to call their products AI-driven. So, are we in a bubble? From a stock market perspective, most likely yes. Many of the promised future revenues are unrealistic under current cost structures. The AI world is also highly self-referential, with companies promising commitments to each other and mutually inflating valuations. Another looming concern is resources. Someone eventually has to pay for the enormous energy and water consumption required by AI data centers. These demands are growing rapidly, and physical resource limits do not scale as easily as software. As a side note, the tension between green energy goals and the massive energy needs of AI is interesting and concerning. Power shortages, higher electricity costs, and rationing for consumers are all possible outcomes. AI data centers will take priority because they are now seen as critical infrastructure for national competitiveness. National security adds another layer. Western countries are in direct competition with China for AI leadership, model capabilities, and global influence. China's partially open-source approach benefits global researchers today, but China's centralized, government-backed push gives them scale that is difficult for Western companies to match. Recently, OpenAI quietly signaled that it might require direct government support to handle its long-term infrastructure commitments. This is a clear admission that the current revenue model cannot sustainably support the next generation of frontier models. That brings us back to Google. In my view, Google will remain one of the main players, especially in consumer chatbots, simply because Google has always been where people go for information. With Gemini now integrated into Google's core products, it is positioned to remain a central force in the future of AI.